And of course, as I always say, one innocent person is one too much, let alone now about 40,000 get killed, about 70-something, about 80,000 get injured. So each one of those just drive a dagger in our hearts. But if there is a price that has to be paid, then let it be. I said that this lecture will be what we call evidence-based, and this means that whatever we say, whatever we do, has to have a very good base for it. In medicine, for example, this concept revolutionized how medicine is done. When I was like a medical student and a very junior doctor, it was just a consultant. He got like 20, 30 years experience. Whatever they say, then that's it. But later on, evidence-based medicine came in, and that revolutionized everything. It's not enough for me. I got 25 years experience in medicine, and I say something. I said, okay, this new drug is better than the old one. I have to give evidence for it. And that's applied everywhere. We know for sure that anybody who doesn't have an evidence of what they say, their position will be shaky. They can be easily challenged, and they will not be able to defend what they say. That's why it's very important that we think well before we talk, we research things, and we should always have a reason to do or say what we are doing. Okay. There is a video, it is a video. You know that these days the demonstration and the American universities and the students making this big thing about Palestine and Gaza, and they ask for stopping the war, they're asking for stop relations with the companies that support the killing. So just like Sheikh Ashur said, there are those kadhabin, those liars that they'll try and twist the facts. So there is a video that shows two girls, like they are university students, and they ask them, why are you demonstrating? And one of them said, she said something, and eventually she said, I honestly don't know all of what New York University is doing. So it showed that she doesn't know exactly why she is in the demonstration. And then her friend next to her said, I wish I was more educated. So they took this video to portray that all those demonstrating are ignorant, they don't know what they are doing, they don't have a very good cause. So they try to undermine the whole movement by this video. And it came to me from different sources in the past week, maybe less than a week. Before I say anything, this video, first I've seen the commentary about it, and it was said in so many different ways. It's the same video, but the text they put of what the girls said is different. So they're playing with the fact a little bit. And the person who sort of spread this video is, what's his name? Giuliani, you know, the lawyer, Trump's lawyer. He's one of the most corrupt people on earth, and he has so many cases against him, and he got defamation cases, and anyway. So we have to analyze the source of the information before we rely on it. Putting this aside, back to the point of evidence-based behavior, evidence-based talking, we always need to know what we are saying. And this is not only logical. Even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in more than one place, he asks, okay, give me your evidence. Depends on the situation, but give me your evidence. Even we are not supposed to believe in God, in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, without an evidence. So the evidence is very crucial, and it is the backbone of what we do. Therefore, I prepared this talk and try to make it as evidence-based as possible. So what I did, the sources that I relied on are mainly international, well-known sources like the United Nations, the Security Council of the United Nations, the International Court of Justice, Red Cross, and preferably I try to get from their own website, because down the track it gets changed. There are some research papers from some universities. There are some Israeli sources, because, I mean, if an Israeli source says something, it supports what we can rely on it more than, as you can see, I've never tried to use a source from Arabic background, because that can be easily challenged. You say, okay, those Arabs, of course, what would they say? And I use the Britannica Encyclopedia and the Wikipedia only where they put references. They say where they got that information from, which is almost always. I didn't use Arabic sources, as I said. I didn't use news agencies or social media, unless if the evidence is within the, for example, a video. You'll see there's one video. I mean, the video, the evidence is in the video, so it doesn't matter where it comes from. And some of those events I lived. I'm not young. All the brothers and sisters from my generation, we've lived all those Arab-Israeli wars and all those events, and we lived it and interacted with it. But still, I didn't rely on my memory and my recollection of the events. So I put all those aside. Okay, let's start with a little puzzle or quiz. And that will demonstrate a very important thing. When I say Australian, when you hear the word Australian, it means citizen of, I need some participation, Australian is citizen of Australia, right? Okay, Canadian is citizen of Canada. American, citizen of America. Okay, when I hear Palestinian, this is citizen of where? What is the logical answer? Right, so Palestinian should be a citizen of Palestine. Okay, so where is Palestine? I looked into the world map. I couldn't find Palestine. I zoomed out to the solar system just in case they came from Mars or Jupiter. Again, no Palestine there. I went to the Milky Way, the galaxy where the solar system, our solar system lives. Again, no luck, no Palestine there. I looked into the whole universe, and there's no Palestine. So where those Palestinians came from then? You see, something as simple and direct like this being sold to us, and we are sort of, our brains are twisted. You hear Palestinians 100 times every day, in the news, on the TV, in the radio, on the social media, Palestinian, good things about them, bad things about them. Has anybody asked themselves where those Palestinians came from? Is that a legitimate question? Where did they came from? Now, if you happen to see a monument of the Anzac basically happened in World War I, like in the early part of the 20th century, 1917, 1916. If you see a monument, I got a photos, but not showing here. You will find the word Palestine. You even find the word Gaza. It's deeply ingrained in the history of the Anzac. And again, nobody asked where these names came from. So it is, I mean, they're that efficient that they change our mind so we only see what they want us to see and blind us, just like the people at the time of Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam did. They twisted the fact, they gagged the mouth, nobody can say the truth, and then they played with everything and sold it, and everybody bought it. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So what we'll try and do, we'll try and answer this question. The mistake I did, I looked into geography to try and find Palestine. The right thing to do is to look through history. So we'll take a little bit of history, very little bit of history. I don't want to make this too long. A little bit of geography, which was very, very important. And then we'll talk about the concept of occupation and all the things that relate to occupation. I was planning to talk about anti-Semitism, which is very important, because this will build up and will come to very important conclusions. Then the next step is talking to yourself, talking to your friends, and then we got these things standing in our way, the anti-Semitism. Understanding what it is, what is the legality of it, what's the ins and outs is very important, but I'll leave it for another time, maybe inshallah in 2 weeks, and talk about it. To be honest, I wish I can give a lecture every day, at least every week, about the subject. What's happening now is not only life-changing, it's world-changing, history-changing. We're at the very top of a curve or a bend in history, and we are witnessing it, and it is so rich, and it gels with all our values, Islamic values, human values, you name it, Gaza is giving it to us. And we are seeing it 24/7 online, alive, and it is a very, very rich experience. And as we see, it links with our history. It links with Karbala. It links with what happened to our imams. It links to the oppression of the companion of the Prophet ﷺ and his followers. Usually, when someone presents a lecture, we make breaks, like in between sections, we make breaks and show something different. This photo I took, and I'm very happy with myself that I did it. And it got even like a hovering bumblebee. This was about 1.5 years ago in Mildura. And I've always admired flying creatures, and what amazes me how insects can fly so efficiently without a tail. But anyway, unfortunately things has changed since then, and though beauty is still there and impressive things in nature are still there, but that is not my focus anymore. My focus will be something like this. The picture that we see day and night coming from Gaza, and every day is more destruction. And looking at these as well, just like we saw amazing things in the photo of the bumblebee, even in these pictures, you will see something that make you think, draw your attention. Anyway, so back to the topic. a little bit of history. What I did, I tried and look the word Palestine and the word Israel as a state, and how many times, like how much it was mentioned and since when in history. So I will start with Palestine. I had a look, and as I said, I looked for things with reference. This is from the Wikipedia. And that's what I found. More than 500 reference in history, in poetry, in politics, in religion. It all mentioned Palestine since about 3,300 years ago. And Palestine was mentioned since then, and there was no gaps. It's been there all the time, never dropped. Palestine was there in one form or the other from at least 3,300 years ago up till pretty much now. It disappeared in 1948. Somebody took a rubber and rubbed it and wrote something else instead, and that's why it's not anymore on the map. But then the concept was resurrected again in 1993 after the Oslo Accord thing. We'll talk about this in a little bit more, and came as Palestinian territories. It's not Palestine, but Palestinian territories. Okay, so to be fair, I looked the word Israel as a state and found an Israeli website did the job for me, and that's what they got. That's it. Israel was mentioned from the biblical time as a place, but then it sort of disappeared. All the talk is about the Israelites, they call them, which is the Israeli people, but not Israel as a place. And those are referred to Prophet Nabiullah Yaqub alayhi salam. His other name is Israel. In the biblical or Jewish understanding, he's a patriarch, like as a religious man, not a prophet. But those are the Israelites. There's no place called Israel. There was some mention about a small, call them regions that has some Jewish ruling throughout history, including Nabiullah Sulaiman alayhi salam, the kingdom of Solomon king. But even Jews did not call it Israel. Even Jews, and this is very important, even Jews didn't call it Israel. Now, probably a lot of you know Theodor Herzl. He's the founder of the Zionism, and Zionism is a movement that worked to establish a national state for the Jewish people. So he's very instrumental in the development of Israel as we know it today. And even him, he did not mention Israel. He just said a homeland for the Jews. And even more interestingly, initially he wanted to establish it in Uganda, not in Palestine. So even the founder of Israel didn't call it Israel, which is very relevant. Now, the other bad thing, or at least in my generation, is Wa'ad Balfour, or the Balfour Declaration in 1917. And this is actually when they got the approval of Britain to establish a Jews state in Palestine. I got the actual letter that Balfour wrote, and look what he said. He asked the king of Britain to establish the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people. He didn't call it Israel. He said, I want a home for the Jews in Palestine. And that's the father of Israel of today. He didn't even call it Israel. And the name suddenly appeared in 1948, and we'll come to this in a minute. So these are the monuments that I talked about, the Anzac monuments, and if you look, you keep it in mind when you see one of those. This is in Moropna in Victoria, and you see Palestine. This other one is in Narrogin in Western Australia, and this is even more interesting. It says Gaza. This is from the early 19th, like 1970 or 1916, right? So, Palestine is the name of a place. Israel is the name of a nation, referring to someone, which is Yaqub alayhi salam. Therefore, it's more appropriate to call it Palestine than Israel, and there's all this evidence that there is something called Palestine, but there's nothing called Israel. This is a video of a woman. She said the most amazing thing anyone that loves his land can say. I'm not sure if there will be. Unfortunately, there's no voice. What she said, even as they're destroying our lands with their shovels, the smell of the dust, the smell of the dirt is, to me, worth the whole world. That's how deeply they are attached to their land, and that's why they will not be defeated, because they will not run away from it. They're sort of very built into it. Anyway, so this is history, a very quick run about some geography. Before 1918, Palestine was part of the Ottoman Empire. The mistake the Ottomans did, they did two mistakes. One of them is they alienated Arabs. They were so sort of like racist, and Arab didn't like them, and Arab would do anything to get rid of the Ottoman Empire. And the second mistake, in World War I, they teamed with the wrong side and they lost the war. Arab did one mistake. They believed Britain. Britain told them, okay, revolt against the Ottoman Empire and we'll give you independence. So they revolt, but didn't get independence. Anyway, so before 1918, it was part of the Ottoman Empire. After World War I and the Ottoman Empire lost, they basically disintegrated it used to be a huge thing, the Ottoman Empire in Europe, Asia, and everywhere. So between 1918 and 1920, it was under sort of like a joint administration of the British, French, and Russian administration for 2 years. And then Palestine, with the beautiful slim shape we know today, appeared in 1920. From 1920 to 1948, it was under the British administration. So they don't own it, they just run it, right? And during that time, when Balfour and all Herzl, they worked to convince the British government to establish Israel on this land. So that's from 1920 to 1948. In 1948, there was a separation, there was a resolution. They decided, okay, we'll give a homeland for the Jews, but it's not the whole of Palestine. The orange one with the letter A, those are for Arabs. The gray one is for the Jews, and the Al-Quds, Jerusalem, has a special treatment. Half of it was given to the new formed Israel, The eastern part, Al-Quds al-Sharqiyya, the eastern part of Al-Quds remained under Arab control. So when it first established, it was not the whole of Palestine. It was only those, so the big patch on the right, that's the West Bank. The one on the corner is Gaza, and if you look at Gaza at that time, it was much bigger than what it is now. Anyway, so that's from 1948 to 1967. In 1967, of course, the 6 Days War that Israel started on the Arab, and that was a disaster. They won the war, and they occupied so many Arabic lands. So basically, the Sinai Peninsula, Sinai, which is Egyptian, it's a huge area. So it's all desert, but it's a huge area. They got the whole of the West Bank, and they got Gaza, which was under the Egyptian administration, and they took the whole of Al-Quds. Not only the western side, they took the west and east and made it their own capital. And they also took a part of Syria, which is the Golan Heights, and also a small area from Lebanon. It's called Shib'a Farms, Mazar' Shib'a. So all these were occupied in 1967. Then after that, there was some negotiation between Egypt and Israel, and end up with a treaty between the two. Egypt made relation like اعترفت بإسرائيل, like admitted that there is a state called Israel, and in return they gave them the Sinai Peninsula back. Probably it was a burden anyway, it's a huge desert. Anyway, so out of all those occupied areas, only Sinai was returned to Egypt. Since 1993, so this continued till 1993. In 1993, we have what we call the Oslo Accord, اتفاقيات Oslo. And what happened there is that the Palestinian, remember the name, Palestinian Liberation Organization, PLO, منظمة التحرير الفلسطيني أو فتح, again made peace with Israel. This is the worst moment in the history of the fight between, and the struggle between the Arab and Israel. The man on the left, on the right, that's Yasser Arafat, which was the head of the PLO. And the one on the left is Menachem Begin, which is the Prime Minister of Israel at the time. And the one at the back is the organizer, Bill Clinton. And in that, what happened there is that, of course, the PLO was the iconic movement for the liberation. Their name is Liberation, Palestinian Liberation Organization, Tahrir. So they got a very honorable history, and they are very instrumental. And that man used to be the symbol of liberation. They betrayed the Palestine, and he went and shook the hand of one of the most ruthless killer. Probably only Netanyahu can beat what this man did, the Israeli one. So this is one of the worst moments in history. And in return, so what happened? In return, they established what they call al-Sulta al-Falastiniya, Palestinian Authority, and they established something they call the State of Palestine, which include Gaza. It's much smaller now than what it was previously, and part of the West Bank. Not the whole West Bank, only those red patches in the West Bank. Al-Quds is not on the list. And the role of the Palestinians, it is not independence. This is very important. It's not independence. They gave them partial civil control, but they're not independent. And those areas remained occupied, but they gave them some movement. And actually, what the Palestinian Authority did, of course, Yasser Arafat died and Mahmoud Abbas came after him. They are one of the whips of Israel to the Palestinian people. They betrayed beyond doubt, they betrayed the Palestinian case, and they are pretty much serving the interests of the other side. This was supposed to be reviewed in about 5 years' time from that date, but it didn't happen till now. It's 33 years and it didn't happen. It will never happen. So that's a very quick run of the story, the geographic story of this area. I'll just skip this video because we don't have sound. Actually, that video deserves, about 2-minute video, it deserves a medal. It's so powerful, a conversation between a woman, I think she's the aunt, living in West Bank, and a girl, her name is Habiba, living in Gaza. It's very touching. I might send it somewhere and you can watch it. Actually, I sent it previously. Anyway, so that's the geography. And quickly, we'll just go through the concept of occupation. And there are 4 things that we need to look into. The first one, is Israel officially an occupying power? Is Israel officially occupied lands? Because if that is proven, it's very bad. But nobody's talking. They're talking about Russia occupying parts of Ukraine, but nobody talks about the occupation of Israel to Arabic lands. So this is the first one. The second one is the obligation of the occupier. Are there any obligation of the occupier? And is resisting occupation, including using force, is this legal? Like if somebody, I mean, we can't sit here and it's obvious. If somebody get into your house, it's only logical that you chuck them out, try and get them out, even if you use force. But when it come to legality and international community, it needs to be more formalized. And the last thing that we'll look at is, does the occupier has the right of self-defense that we've been hearing since the beginning of Tawfan al-Aqsa? Okay, so is Israel actually officially an occupation force? I'll just go, I mean, I'll not, just quickly, this is from United Nations Security Council resolution in 1967, they call it occupation. The UN General Assembly called it occupation. The Fourth Geneva Convention, this is very important. The Fourth Geneva Convention is very, very important. I recommend that everybody read it. It's about human rights relating to Palestine. And it's called it occupation and mentioned it very specifically. Said the West Bank, East Jerusalem, Gaza Strip, Sinai Peninsula, that's before they returned it, and Golan Heights. And that's in 1999, not from the 60s. So what is the situation with Australia? Australia, again, it formalized the way it called those Palestinian Authority areas as occupied. So Australia official, that's from 2023, Penny Wong, this is only last year, formalized the way they call those areas, and they decide to call it occupation. So Australia position is occupation. UK, New Zealand, and the EU, they all call these areas occupation. America used to call it occupation until 2018, at the time of Trump, where they stopped calling it occupation. But the whole world, United Nations, you name it, they call it occupation. So it is officially an occupation, and these are the areas. We'll come to those very briefly at the end because there's a very important conclusion. These are the areas that they occupied through their history since 1948 till now. Okay, so are they officially occupiers? Yes. Now, what are the obligations? There's so many obligations. I will not go through them all, but there are so many obligations of the occupier to the occupied land and its people, and the Israeli has violated them all. Go and read the Fourth Geneva Convention, and you'll be surprised. And you'll be surprised how nobody is talking about it. It's just forgotten. It's all there. And now with the internet, you can go onto the website of the United Nations and you'll find all these details. So Israel did not hold any, I'm not talking about just Gaza and just now. That's why when they say Tufan al-Aqsa didn't start on the 7th of October last year, but it's been a suffering of 75 years building up, and it exploded. Now, is the person or people who are occupied, do they have the right to resist, including using force? Again, I don't want to, for the sake of time, this is from what they call him the father of international law. That's from the 17th century. He said that the man has three good reasons to go to war. One of them is defense. So he approved that using force to expel the occupier is legal. And more importantly, United Nations General Assembly resolution in, it's called 45/130 in 1990. Again, they said, if you look at the last line, it's a long story, but they say, yes, the occupied has the right to defend itself, including armed struggle. So if somebody say Hezbollah is a terrorist organization because they are attacking Israelis in Mazar al-Shib'a, which is Lebanese, and Hezbollah, or in Syria, or Hamas when they attack Israel. Those are occupied, and they are attacking the occupier, and this is perfectly legal by all international human and logical aspects. So the occupied has the right to defend themselves, including using force. And the last point, that the occupier has the right, we heard this a lot, Israel has the right to defend itself, especially since the Tufan al-Aqsa started. Do they really have the right to self-defense? And again, I don't want to go into everything, but this is the International Court of Justice on a different incident between Israel and the Palestinian, and it ruled out, rejected Israel's claim to self-defense. And this is Francesca Albanese. She is a United Nations Special Rapporteur on Occupied Palestinian Territories. That's only after Tufan al-Aqsa started. And again, she said Israel cannot claim the right of self-defense. So if we look at this, Israel is officially an occupier. They did not do any of their obligation. The occupied has the right to fight the occupier, and the occupier doesn't have the right to self-defense. And this is all based on international documents throughout history. As I said, religiously, morally, logically, doesn't need saying, but we got the support of the whole international bodies supporting those concepts. So if we go back to those areas that where I'll finish with this. If we go to all those areas that Israel has occupied, of course we consider the existence of them on Palestine as an occupation, because Britain did not own Palestine to give it to the Jews. They should have did a referendum or something like this and let the people who are living in Palestine decide its fate, not donated it to the Jews. But anyway, if we say from 1948 till now, they occupied part of Gaza and the West Bank at the beginning, and then in 1967 they occupied all those areas that we talked about. Between 1980, like 1982 to 2000, they invaded big parts of Lebanon. They reached almost to Beirut. And then we'll see how each one ended. And in 2006, they tried to invade the southern part of Lebanon, but then they get checked out. So let's see what's the fate of all those occupation. The first one is still happening, it's ongoing. The Sinai Peninsula, we said that there was some negotiation and they withdrew in 1982. And all those ones are still ongoing. The defeat in Lebanon, they were checked out by force. And that was a glory. It happened in the year 2000. Probably a lot of us didn't take much attention. They stayed there for about 20 years or 18 years. And then Lebanon did not have any resistance then, and they organized themselves. Hezbollah was not there, but started with Amal movement, and they start organizing themselves. And then in the year 2000, Israel ran away out of Lebanon and at night, and with the loudspeaker say, "Don't shoot, we are leaving, don't kill us." They're begging them. That was a glorious moment in history, in our history and humanity history, where a very tiny country like Lebanon, with no army, with nothing, after 18 years of fight, they forced them to run just like rats. And again, in 2006, they went into southern Lebanon, and they were checked out by force again by Hezbollah. Again, unconditional withdrawal. They did not achieve any of their goals of that invasion. So what is the lesson that we learn from this? I'll finish with this. How do you move from occupation to liberation? We got negotiation, like what happened with Sinai, but that was preceded by a war, and between the stop of the war until the agreement happened, Egypt used something called war of attrition, Harb al-Istinzaf, just like guerrilla war, and they kept attacking them. So it was not only negotiation that achieved that result. We got the two times they were checked out of Lebanon were by force, by military resistance. So these are the three means that we have: negotiation, United Nations, Security Council, you name it, the Arab League, the Muslim League. Don't count on them. Do it, but don't sit and wait, because they will not do anything for you. Negotiation, yes, maybe, but not on its own. As we saw, Sinai, it was not only negotiation, it was preceded by a war, and war of attrition, and that's what made them agree to return Sinai to the Egyptian. And force is the way. Force is the way. I mean, if we learn anything from this long string of history, at least with Israel, Force is the only way to move from occupation to liberation. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I'll just show you, I'm sorry that I'll have to show you this, but I have to. So we don't. These are the pictures or photos. Look at this video. This girl is buried under rubble. Look at her. And we don't know what happened to her, what's happened to her legs. Look at this boy. I'll borrow, if I want to borrow anything from the Jews, I'll borrow one statement. After World War II and the Holocaust and all the losses they had, they have this slogan, never forgive, never forget. And that's what we should do. How can we forgive this? How can we forget this? I'm not saying that we're going to kill them, but hold them accountable, bring them in front of justice, and this should not go and should not be forgotten. That's their slogan, and now they are under the effect of this slogan. A couple of days ago, a woman, I've never heard of her. Her name is Farah Al-Hashim. She's Lebanese Kuwaiti director of movies and programs. She said this beautiful statement. She said, عمرك شفت طوفان بينجي الواحد من الغرق. Have you ever seen a flood that saved you from drowning? Absolutely, that's what Tufan al-Aqsa is doing. It's saving us all, saving all humanity. Hopefully it will get to its final goal. And inshallah, to me, I remember what's happening every minute of my, maybe even during sleep, before my salat, during my salat, after my salat, when I'm fasting, when I'm breaking my fast, when I see a child, when I see an old man, when I see a hungry person, when I see food, when I see water, when I see health services, I remember Gaza. I'll never forget it for not one moment. Inshallah, we'll have another session and we'll talk about any other topics. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Sorry, it took a little bit longer than I expected, but if there's any questions or any comments, you're welcome to share them. No? Okay, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.